Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Eltonin and here we talk about whatever my brain has decided to hyperfixate on. Today of which is Epic the Musical. On the 16th is the 4-year anniversary of knowing about Epic the Musical, at least for me. A video was posted in 2021 by Jorge about how he was creating a new musical.
I'm writing a musical about the Odyssey and this is how it goes. There once was a man, cunning mind running through the sky and the sands, in the land of gods and monsters, sought to see his family prosper at any and all costs, and through the process he became dauntless. Now he's remembered forever for his endeavors, and all he ever lived was the life of a legend, a life that was epic. 600 men, 600 men under my command, with only one goal in mind.
Make it back alive to our homeland.
600 men, 600 miles of open sea. But the problem's not the distance,
It's what lies in between.
and Ithaca's waiting. My kingdom is waiting. Penelope's waiting for me. So full speed ahead.
I don't think at the time I realized how invested I was gonna get in this random musical. So our first saga, our first topic is to kind of answer what circumstances kind of made Epic the Musical like a weirdly perfect storm to get as big as they did. A lot of times fandoms do not appear out of the blue. They do not come from the void. There's usually fandoms that precede it. And with Epic the Musical being based around the Odyssey, what you had is a little Venn diagram of interests kind of all combining together. That being Percy Jackson enjoyers, Greek mythology enjoyers, Hades Town fans specifically, musical theater fans generally. Now there's a lot of overlap between these fandoms. Like a lot of Percy Jackson fans are fans of Percy Jackson the musical, which makes them musical theater fans. There are also people who are not Percy Jackson fans but are fans of musical theater or fans of Hades Towns. The only thing that everyone had to be just a little bit was some form of musical theater fan. Epic is a fully sung musical in the way of Hades Town or Les Mis or especially Hamilton, where you can like listen to the full musical and you don't have to go in person to watch it happen. You miss no context if the only way that you're consuming this musical is through Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube, etc. If you're not a fan of musical theater, you're gonna have a bad time because that's all there is, baby. You can, however, enjoy Epic the Musical and not be a fan of Percy Jackson or Greek mythology. Will people find you a little strange? Yes, but you can do that, which means that you will run into like little discourses where people who are not big fans of Greek mythology, their only like reference for Greek mythology is like other people's references to Greek mythology. So it's very much like a he said, she said, he said, she said all the way down, which does lead into some very interesting discourses where people will have an opinion and then everyone else is like, that's not how that works. Editor Elton in here. I never explained what I was talking about, so we're gonna do that now. What happened is that the Calypso song was released and people were like, hey, is this like SA vibes? Because it kind of feels like it. That's kind of weird. And then other people were like, maybe, kind of depends on like the interpretation. Other people were like, no, she's cursed to fall in love with whoever comes on her island. And then other people were like, so that's a Percy Jackson invention, that's not lore invention. And then other people were like, no, it's in the Odyssey. And then other people were like, no, it's not. Anyways, I read the Odyssey. It is a Percy Jackson invention that Calypso is cursed to fall in love with the sailors on her island. The essay possibilities are that what it is, it's up to kind of like interpretation and the version of the translation that you're reading. So it's like, is it consensual, is it not, does he or he not have kids with either Calypso or Circe? No, maybe, question mark. That's what I meant. Anyways, back to the video. The Odyssey has been here for centuries, like multiple thousands of years, And it has this fun little thing where people will take the book that has already been written in its original Greek translation and then translate it. And then somebody will read that translation and write something inspired by that. Homer was just the first one to write the Odyssey. He was not the first one to tell the Odyssey, which is why a lot of Greek myths have like 70 million different versions, which is why you can get very vast amounts of interpretations from the handful of myths, especially once you get into like our modern day writing style, where you can have various qualities of books. You can have your epic the musical, Percy Jackson, Song of Achilles, even things like Lore or Blood of Hercules. And it does help when you are listening to a specifically Homer's Odyssey inspired musical to have a little bit of context of the myths, especially writing Greek inspired things. Is you have to use a little bit of shorthand when trying to convey certain ideas. If you try to do something like sit someone down to be like, oh, here's this character, hold on, pause, wait, here's thousands of years of context. So you just have to like shorten it up a little bit. Otherwise, you've fully paused to be able to talk about one character who's only like half mildly relevant. In the first song, Odysseus makes reference to like Diomedes and little Ajax and Hector, and you don't really go into like the full scope of the Iliad because the Iliad is massive, but there's enough references to it that if you've read the Iliad or if you've read, Song of Achilles or looked at a Wikipedia article, you've got enough of a general gist that you don't need to go through the whole story of the apple and Aphrodite and Athena and Hera and Paris and Helen. You're just like, if you have that context, it does make it a little bit easier to jump into it and go. But if you just listen to it and you're like, what the fuck is going on? You can easily look it up. Which is the fun part, is that so many people wanna fuck the Greeks so bad. So much Greek mythology inspired literature and movies, Greek myth inspired music, and Epic the Musical is just another thing in this vast array of Greek inspired literary and musical works.
All right, my brothers, listen closely.
Musical theater, in its very nature, is inaccessible. It requires a large group of people to perform, practice, and then put on the show, which then restricts the amount of time in which you, as an audience member, can go and observe said show. Which also means that, depending on your financial situation, severely limits the number of musicals that you can go and see. But if you wanted to go see a Broadway musical, you have to travel to New York, get a hotel, pay for the tickets, take time off of work, and at that point, if you're already in New York, depending on how far away you are, you're going to want to take a couple more days off. That way you can actually go see New York, because the further you are away from something, the more you want to turn it into an actual trip and not just like, oh, let's just go out. Let's go out and see a Broadway musical. But you can't do that if you're over in California. The advent of the internet allows for more accessibility to musical theater, whether through slime tutorials or cast recordings. But with musicals that are not sung through, they lack the spoken dialogue, which helps flow those songs together, which is why a lot of people turn to slime tutorials to watch a show that they would not be able to watch otherwise. Most of the major fandoms for musicals have never seen the show in person. I've seen Dear Evan Hansen, the Book of Mormon musical, Ride the Cyclone, all of these shows that are so fundamental in being a fan of musical theater without ever actually seeing them in person. The only musical that I've seen in person is the Addams Family musical, because that tends to be one of the most popular ones to put on. You have specifically musical theater people who make shows knowing full well that there is an internet audience, like Star Kid. I've seen every single one of Star Kid's musicals multiple times because they make it very easy to watch, to be able to listen to be involved in the Star Kid community without ever having to go to a Star Kid show in person. With more sung through musicals, it is also then easier to listen to a full musical specifically supporting cast album recording without having to go to a slime tutorial, because they have every single song. You are able to experience the musical, such in the case of Hamilton. Hamilton also had this very fun aspect of the community where people would go in and create animatics to the musical songs, so you could listen to and watch a full Hamilton musical play without ever going to the theater. sometimes pulling from the stage musical itself, other times just going off on their own and being like, nope, this is how I see it instead. Musical theater is inherently a audiovisual medium. You cannot just listen to it audibly. You cannot just see it. You have to have both. Otherwise, certain things don't make sense. This shows up in Epic, where you watch their official live streams as they're reacting to all the songs that have been released. You have those little animatics scattered through, but you'll also notice that in their lyric videos, they have like stage directions where they're like, hey, this is like the visually what would be happening to piece these verses together, to piece these lyrics together. You have to know that Odysseus is holding the Joy-Co remote. You have to know that he's cradling it. You have to know that he's throwing it off the edge of the castle and it's falling to its death. Like, you have to know that about the Joy-Co remote. Otherwise, like, the flow of the song doesn't make sense. As with the rise of TikTok especially, it made accessing musicals so much easier. You no longer had to have a little bit of a knowledge, already be in the community to kind of know what was happening, because musicals would just show up on your For You page, oftentimes with the verses being lip synced to, being created to by people who have as much context as the musical as you do. Six the Musical was one that got very big on TikTok because it had a couple of songs go semi-viral, like the 9-inch corset trend.
You brings a corset, still brings its inches. No one wants a waist over 9 inches.
Where people tied up their corsets to that lyric. A good half of those people that got like really big videos, like multi-million views on those videos, have never seen the musical, have never listened to the musical. But because they created that video to that song lyric, people are now invested where that song lyric came from, and in that they're going to find the song, and in that they're going to find the musical. It's like a little bitty pipeline, but participants do not have to know about the musical to be a part of the pipeline, thus making being able to find a musical, to be able to participate in a community around a musical much easier, because it's right there at the swipe of your fingertips. You will stumble into it. You do not have to go looking for it. You do not need to be recommended it. You will find it by accident. Epic the Musical kind of takes both of like the Hamilton animatics and the accessibility of TikTok and smushes it together into this like perfect little like combination that you will not be able to find anywhere else. Perhaps in the future, we'll be able to see more musicals kind of come up from the ground. The only thing that Epic the Musical did not have for a while was an official cast recording. But once that started going out, it started getting a lot more traction a lot quicker, because people were now able to hear the full songs, be able to experience the full songs, be able to watch other people react to the full songs. Now you'll have like fandoms and communities where streamers and creator themselves may not have known about Epic, but enough of their fans requested their reaction to it, so they're like, well, we might as well watch it. And now the rest of that community who did not know about Epic now knows about Epic because their creator. It's so cool. I love the internet and how it like interacts with each other. To truly understand where we were at as like a TikTok musical theater community when Epic was first conceptualized, not to January 2021 when the first video was posted, but August 2020. August 2020, a lot of things happening. It was a couple months into COVID. Everyone was like in various states of stuck at home. I was in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. Someone goes on TikTok and posts a video making a little love ballad to Remy the Ratatouille. Honestly, kind of catchy. It's like, it's a little earwormy where you're just like, damn, okay, that's fair. Another person takes the song, puts a little orchestral beat behind it, and talks about how this is the final song, ensemble version, where big and loud and everyone's singing and all coming together. And
Remy the Ratatouille, the rat of all my dreams. I praise you, oh Ratatouille, may the world remember your name.
Ratatouille musical, the Ratatouille. There's way too many people with way too much access to GarageBand and microphones because everyone decided, I guess, we'll just start streaming. So everyone had like a decent quality microphone. All the musical theater kids were bored out of their minds and they wanted something to do. So they made Ratatouille music. One, Ratatouille is a food and not like a title, but regardless, they started making Ratatouille music. They started making Ratatouille playbills. They started making Ratatouille set designs and choreography. There is nothing theater kids love more than committing to the bit. And the bit will be committed all the way to jail for being arrested for public indecency at a Denny's restaurant at midnight after a show. That's how it goes. A large corporation looks at that and they're like, give me the rat. And so they announce in January there's going to be a Remy the Ratatouille musical, the Ratatouille. And now people were like, what the fuck? It's September. When I originally recorded this, I said September because that seems slightly more plausible. No, they announced it in early December that it was going to be a premiere on January. That's crazy because that's less than a full month together, full musical. Could you do it? Possibly. Will it be good? Probably not. We find that the people are being casted. People are like, how the fuck are they going to put on a stage show when the theaters aren't even open? Because they're not. What they're doing, it is a Zoom. They have this star-studded cast of like actual Broadway actors and everything recording from their phones. The audio, fucked. The set design, fucked. The acting, messy. People looking at each other, no. The choreography, the same three people with TikTok filters turning them from one person into three people. It's a moment. Overall, it was a really interesting progression of theater kids and TikTok in enclosed space being able to put us together a musical. There was kind of a knowledge that it wasn't going to go anywhere other than that, just because it was, in a sense, a bit everyone kind of committed to. And then once that musical happened, the hype kind of died down. And then 6 days after the Remy the Ratatouille musical, Jay posts a video saying that he's making a musical. There is the first song snippet. All of like the musical theater kids with history of making a musical out of nothing in still like pandemic era are like, you know what? Why not? You get people covering the little snippets of the songs that he's created. You're getting people designing sets and costumes. Unlike Remy the Ratatouille, the musical, it is not a collective creation. Jay had been working on Epic for a year and a half, he said, when he posted the first couple of videos, that he already had like 23 songs already set up. He had a vision in mind. He had a goal in mind. There was a clear plot line. He had done a musical before, inspired by his own life, where he was originally supposed to be a med student and then switched over to musical theater called My Heart Says Go. It used to be called Stupid Humans. This was his project. This wasn't, here's a bit, let's go. Unlike Remy the Ratatouille musical, where it had this like very high peak and then immediate drop off, Epic just started doing this very slow climb. It was a lot smaller of a fan base when it first got posted, when the first few months were going on. People were like, but we never had full songs yet. And then there was like a mid-period where you'd kind of check in on a minute, but it wasn't like, oh, I need to see what's next. Listening, but it wasn't like, this is the topic. There's always something happening in the Epic community. It was like kind of chill for a little bit. And by the time that he had created enough songs to start working on the next step of making like a cast album recording, musical theater had already started back up again. There were suddenly a lot less major Broadway actors, big names that were super into this idea of like doing a TikTok musical. So he starts doing casting calls, and this is where we start to see interest start to ramp again. When doing these open casting calls, there were no requirements. You could be anyone with any voice.
You may have heard me say this phrase during Epic auditions. Anyone can audition. And I wanted to take a second to clarify what I mean by that. When I say that anyone can audition, I mean that anyone, regardless of your age, gender, location in the world, anything, can audition.
But Jay, I'm 100 years old.
That's totally fine.
But I live on the other side of the planet.
That's totally okay.
But the character is a different gender than I am.
That's great. You can still audition. Listen, if we hear your voice and decide that your voice is the right fit for the character, we will do everything in our power to make it work regardless of the circumstances. So if there's a character that really resonates with you, audition. You never know what could happen. I hope this helps. Always remember that for Epic, anyone can audition.
A lot of people in the musical theater side of TikTok who had voices and a nice camera, or even like the singer-songwriters, be like, hey, let me throw my hat in the ring. Like, let me just, even if I'm not going to be casted, there's clearly interest in this. The worst thing that's going to do is give me more eyes on my own music. The timing of Epic could not be any more perfect in the way of the first video that we had only a few days after the Remy the Ratatouille musical. There hasn't been a new major musical in a minute. Like, you've had your Hades-Towns, your Hamilton, your Heathers, your Mean Girls, etc., but you haven't had one in a little that's been like the thing that you have to listen to other than Epic. If you look at Epic's like listen to counts compared to some of the biggest musicals of the past like 10 years, it is on par, if not exceeding a lot of them in less than half the time to like literally 6 months. Every time that an Epic saga would come out, it would hit the Apple Music like top major albums.
I wanted to make this video really quick because I appreciate you guys so much, and I wanted to show you guys just how powerful you guys are. First off, you guys managed to get Epic The Vengeance Saga to have over 21 million streams in less than a week. What? Second, they changed the category in which Epic would be considered for charts. So it's no longer in top cast albums. Now it's part of top compilation albums. And you still got it to number 1 on this different chart. And it's crazy because I'm not with a label or some big company or anything like that yet, you know? It's just us. It's the Winion community. So thank you all for coming together and supporting me and believing in me and in this project. I love you all.
This last one overtook Wicked as like the big ones of the day. It's just cool. Timing wise, it's a very fascinating thing to watch a fandom grow, to watch a community grow, and to watch change and evolve and perfect itself over time. I just think it's neat. There was an Ocean Saga drama where this artist called Morgan, who has an absolutely stunning voice, and you should absolutely go listen to her music. My favorite song is The Rumble. That is my recommendation. Go forth. She did a cover of the Get in the Water song.
Get in the water. Get in the water.
Which went viral enough on TikTok. People made lip syncs and POVs to her cover of the song specifically. So people very much associated her with the song. And this was before we knew our Poseidon casting. So when it came out that Stephen was casted as Poseidon, there was a whole big fuss where people are like, but what about her? But what about her? But what about her? She's okay. That was like it for like major dramas, was the fact that somebody did a cover and people really liked that and they didn't get casted. And then people, like, once they heard Poseidon's voice, were like, oh, I see why he got casted. Oh my god. Shh. Okay, hold on. Oh my god. There's a little face on his side. That's so cute. What was I talking about? Fandom and an audience are two separate things. They have a lot of overlap, but they are not the same thing. You can set out to create an audience, you can set out to create a community. You cannot set out to create a fandom. Fandoms kind of just happen with no real input from the creator. The audience can partake in fandom and partake in the creator's work, but the fandom itself tends to be separate from the general audience. These are the people that create, inspired by the creation. A good, strong fandom has to have a couple of pillars. The first pillar, and the most important pillar, is the media. The media has to exist for a fandom to exist. Media, in this sense, also can mean actual real-life people. You can have fandoms for creators. You can have fandoms for, like, actors. As long as it exists and it can be in some way consumed, you can create a fandom for it. With that media, you have to have creators of media related to it. These are going to be your cosplayers, your fanfiction writers, your animators, and your artists. All animators are artists, but not all artists are animators. Every fandom will have these four pillars in various sizes. Hamilton had a lot of animators, artists, decent amount of fanfiction writers, and some cosplayers. And also, TikTok was not as big, so you would see like one or two Hamilton cosplayers in like the full suit and tie getup, but that was not as fun as like a cosplaying a superhero or somebody with like, that didn't just look like a guy. What is very big is, because of its musical nature, is very easy to associate prompts and POVs and writings because it is a story. Certain snippets, you have beginning, middle, end, or you have like middle, end. There's a little conclusion. You can make like a little story within of itself. Epic cosplayers are not a massive part. Epic audios in cosplay do end up being kind of big, which is the kind of situation you can only get because it's a musical, especially with the Ithaca Saga releasing its final love song. I love seeing cosplays and like edits of the song to other characters, especially Batman characters. I really love them to Batman characters. The other thing that Epic has in small amounts is fanfiction writers. Whatever you think Epic the Musical writers write about, that's exactly what they're writing about. And my two favorite ways of dipping my toes into fan fiction for whatever fandom I'm in is sorting by kudos, because that gives you kind of point of reference of what everybody's read before, and then to sort by word count. If you sort by kudos, Epic the Musical, it is mostly Percy Jackson crossovers, which should not be surprising. If you sort by word count, however, you get a very different story. What you get is smut. And then after that is Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. Like, I'm not surprised that there's not as much fanfiction for Epic the Musical. One, because fanfiction takes Five Nights at Freddy's, and two, it's a little bit easier to write fanfiction about completed work sometimes, because then you have those fix-it bits, ends up making like a big backbone of fanfiction. And then also just because Epic the Musical is really good, which then lends itself to not a lot of fanfiction you'll find. Like Arcane has some really, really good fanfictions, but there's not as much because most people are like satisfied. They're like happy with it. But if you go over to like Batman fanfiction, there's a lot of them because people are like, fuck canon, I don't think it exists anymore. But nobody's really doing that with Epic because it's like, but it's good though. And good media does not lend itself to fanfiction, you'll find. The worse it is, or the more queerbaity it is, the more fanfiction there is. Or sometimes, you know, the less it exists, the more fan fiction there is. But that's kind of just like an S&D tier and like Marauders thing, not so much like a general rule of fan fiction. The next two pillars is you're going to be your artists and your animators. Artists and animators are like the people for Epic the Musical. You have like the ones that everybody knows, like Gigi and Wolfie. Their videos kind of show up on YouTube because they have like millions of views. I am those millions of views. And then you have the ones that commissioned for the official live streams. And then you have the hundreds of artists and animators they'll just stumble upon because your For You page is like, oh, what if you do this? And you're just like, I'm obsessed with that. And the fact that you've done this makes me in love with you. And I don't know what to do with myself, but I will think about this for the next 3 days and rewatch that video again and again and again. There's so many like interesting designs, especially for the gods. When the God games came out and everyone was doing their God games animatics, I was eating them up because one thing about me that the 3 people who play D&D know about is I'm very much obsessed with like deities and like the depiction of deities and like how they're viewed by people, and the less human they are, the more cool I find them. So whenever Athena has like owl features, or like Hermes is like a little freak, or Zeus is like a little cloud man, or Poseidon's like the freaky little horse monster, like that's like, damn, okay, hear me out. But that feeds such like a community in and of itself. You'll have the fandom as a whole, and then for these artists, they'll essentially create their own little fandoms and little communities that are specifically obsessed with their works. Though now, because of like the one media, like a dozen other people now have thriving like fandoms of their own, thriving little communities of their own, which is so fascinating. And it's really neat, and it's really neat to see how it interacts with each other. Was this just an excuse to do skull makeup for the Underworld Saga? Probably. Who are you to say? You don't know me. What we're talking about now is specifically the music of Epic the Musical, because I've rambled on about the community fandom and its intersections with musical theater, and how Epic the Musical is kind of like a shot in the dark, that like the ripple effect that essentially created Epic the Musical to be as big as it is. What I have not talked about is the music. That is, in theory, the most important part of Epic. And the thing that is hard to talk about music is that it's really good, and I I find it's very easy for me to rip apart things that I hate. Very easy to be like, this is wrong, this is why this is wrong, this is bad, this is why this is bad. But when things are good, it's very hard for me to be like, this is why it's good, because as a collective, it is good. Do you understand? The fact that Jay has been so open about his creation process, how he creates the songs, and what certain things are in the songs, which allows people to be able to pinpoint what is good and potentially what is bad about things. What I find I really enjoy about Epic is this use of motifs. The dies irae, or the death motif, is used a lot in music in general because it's a series of notes that is kind of like implanted in the back of your brain. The more that you hear things, the more that you listen to music as like, oh, spooky notes. Those little notes to be able to be like, ah, spooky shit is happening. Not only does Epic have motifs like that, it also has musical instruments assigned to each character. So you're able to like listen to the music without lyrics and know who is like speaking.
In the music of Epic, many characters have instruments that are specific to them. Here are some examples. Odysseus is represented by a guitar that changes type based on his intentions and mood.
Remember then, when the fire begins to fade. Will these actions haunt my days?
Athena is represented by a piano, and whenever she uses her signature move Quick Thought, a clock sound effect plays to the tempo of the music.
Goddess of wisdom, master of war.
Eurylochus is the voice of the soldiers and crew, and so his singing is often accompanied by the voices of his comrades.
600 men. 600 men.
Polites likes to greet the world with open arms, and so his instruments are a lot more playful, welcoming, and higher pitched, like a kalimba and a marimba.
This life is amazing when you greet it with open arms.
Poseidon is represented by a trumpet.
You are the worst kind of good, cause you're not even great.
Odysseus has the guitar, and this comes in various forms where you're able to play on the intensity of the guitar, the loudness of it, the specific guitar, to see how he's essentially changing across songs, across music, how he goes from someone who's willing to do mercy, who's willing to have open arms, to someone who is ruthlessness, who is the monster. So by distilling him down to a single instrument and then being able to play off that instrument, you're able to add to the experience of it. Not only is the story showing that he is changing, not only the lyrics showing that he's changing, but the literal music itself is changing with it. So you're not having this like dissonance between music and dialogue. You also have things like Penelope's viola. She has her little note segment that you don't even need to hear her name to know that that is Penelope.
I'm writing a musical about the Odyssey, and this is how I made the music for Penelope, the Queen of Ithaca. Many of the characters in Epic have a specific instrument designated to them, and Penelope's is the viola. I actually plant this seed of association between Penelope and the viola in the very first song in Epic, when Odysseus is singing, Penelope. This same melody plays at the beginning of Song 36, The Challenge, signaling to us that this song is about Penelope.
I cannot hear those notes in that order without thinking Penelope, because those two things are so deeply associated with each other that there is no difference. In the song Just a Man, there is this set of notes that you associate with those lyrics. Like, I'm just a man who's trying to go home.
I'm just a man who's trying to go home, even after all the years away from what I've known. I'm just a man who's fighting for his life. Deep down I would trade the world to see my son and wife. I'm just a man.
And that's held on to and repeated a couple in key moments of the song, specifically in Would You Fall in Love With Me Again, where the music swells and you hear those notes and you associate them back to those lyrics. There's a thing in writing called show don't tell, where instead of saying he is sad, you're supposed to be like he feels the tears welling up in his eyes, guilt weighing on his soul, things like that, to imply sadness. However, in musical theater, sometimes you have to directly say exactly what they're feeling for you to be able to show it later. Like in the first song, it spells it out very clearly. What do you wish for? Who do you fight for? And Odysseus says Penelope and Telemachus.
Ask yourself inside, what do you live for? What do you try for? What do you wish for? What do you fight for? What do you live for? What do you try for? What do you wish for? What do you fight for? Penelope, Penelope, and Telemachus.
It is not implied, it is directly stated. That way, every time you hear Penelope's little ever it is mentioned, like, what will you do? How far will you go? You hear her little viola and you know that is what he fights for. That is what he wishes for. That is what he will do absolutely everything for, is to go back to Penelope. There is no Odysseus without Penelope. They are intrinsically tied together. And through that first song, you get all of these little bits that are repeated throughout the musical that they no longer have to state exactly what they mean. Because they stated it, they can now show it. This also happens with things like quick thought. The first time that we are told about the quick thought is in Warrior of the Mind, where you hear Athena's little note. It is a song that happens in a second. The timeline is a little bit more like wiggly, where it's not like directly this happens, this happens. It's referential back to the past, which we don't see in a lot of the other songs. A lot of the songs are all about progress. They're not necessarily about looking back. So in Warrior of the Mind, we hear about Athena's quick thought, and now that we know about that, the next time that we see Athena with Telemachus...
Need some help?
What's going on here?
It's cool to see it like show up again. The biggest thing, the biggest little notes other than Penelope's viola is what is known as the danger motif.
The first time we hear this motif is in the very first song. Now, what's cool about this motif is I try to incorporate it in other parts of the show in sometimes obvious and other times not so obvious ways. And one of my favorites is in Poseidon's reveal, because the way Poseidon's name is sung is the danger motif. The Sidon of Poseidon follows the melody of the danger is nearby motif, because the danger is right there. Still don't believe me? Check this out.
Poseidon, 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 Poseidon.
If you go back and listen to the songs right now, you might find that the danger is nearby motif shows up more often than one might initially think.
The danger motif is, again, a little series of notes where we are set up to be afraid. Just like the Dies Irae, where we're like, oh, that's spooky stuff is happening. Danger motif is like, oh, danger is happening. Danger is coming. Danger is here. Where it kind of like prompts you and like sets you back up. In the same way that writers will describe the scene of where their characters are entering, throw in like little specific little adjectives to be like, oh, this is a spooky scene that they're about to go into, but I'm not going to be like, spooky stuff is happening. Just in like the way that you write things to make a sense of unease or to get rid of a sense of unease, to give a sense of calm. The danger motif does that. It sets you up. Unlike Penelope's viola or unlike the quick thought, it is not the exact same notes. It is not the exact same music, which allows it to adapt to each of the songs and each of the monsters that are threatening to attack them.
Stay back, Nestor, secure Helen and protector. Neo, avenge your father, kill the brothers of Hector. Poseidon, in all my years of Eurylochus, no! You've doomed us. You've doomed us all, Eurylochus! Captain?
What is fascinating, along with like the monsters and the threats and the danger, you'll see in specifically the titles of the song, all of the monster songs are titled based on who the threat that they're fighting, and specifically the monsters. The gods that they come across, your Poseidons and Zeus, their songs are not titled Poseidon and Zeus. They're titled Ruthlessness, Get in the Water, Thunderbringer, etc. Polyphemus, you have Scylla, you have Charybdis, and then you have Odysseus. The thread that we follow of Odysseus wondering, is he a man or is he a monster based on the actions that he has done?
But when does a comet become a meteor? When does a candle become a blaze? When does a man become a monster? When does a ripple become a tidal wave? When does the reason become the blame? When does a man become a monster?
The other thread that we find is that when we meet our antagonists, our Polyphemus, our Poseidons, is that they come with a chorus that chants their name.
Poseidon.
We hear this lead up, we hear this build up all the way up into the song Odysseus, where he is executing the suitors in his house, where we hear that choir chanting his name, we hear that danger motif, but this time it is in Odysseus's guitar. Because he is the danger, he is the monster, he is the antagonist, he is the threat that they are facing. And like all of the other times that we hear the danger motif, we hear the chanting, people die. Only this time, it's not the people that Odysseus cares about, because he, being the monster, protects the people that he cares about, which is just so cool. They like hear this build up, to hear this essentially foreshadowing before and like have it pay off and not be like told that it's pay off. With having Jay talk about it, you're able to be like, ah yes, duh, which is why I really like hearing the creator talk about their creations. And also because of this like motif thing, petition of like certain lines, like open arms keeps coming the fuck up. It starts in the song Open Arms, which is one of our ideas of like man versus monster starts to come in, with Pleiades being like, greet the world with open arms.
Whatever we face, we'll be fine if we're leading from the heart. No matter the place, we can light up the world. Here's how to start. Greet the world with open arms. Greet the world with open arms.
And be empathetic and open and being not so distrustful and everything. And then he dies because of it. And then we hear it again haunting the narrative. We hear it in the Underworld saga.
This life is amazing when you greet with open arms. Whatever we face, we'll be fine if we're leading from the heart. No matter the place, we can light up the world. Here's how to start. Greet the world with open arms. Greet the world with open arms.
We hear it in when he's on Calypso's island.
Stay in my open arms.
When he's grieving, and then we hear it for the last time where the suitor says, forgive us, let's have open arms instead, where we hear that final like little like 2 words that have haunted Odysseus throughout the narrative, and he shoots the guy and says no. because he has already decided that ruthlessness is mercy. He has already made that decision, and that goes back to ruthlessness and the song Open Arms, where we've been setting up like these concepts, these ideas, these belief systems, and now we're faced with all of them. And I just think Odysseus, the song, it is a song that you cannot listen to without listening to all of the other ones, because it does not hit as hard without them. Because if you don't know about the choir, about the danger motif, about Open Arms, about ruthlessness, about everything that Odysseus has experienced that's all accumulated into this one song, it does not hit as hard as if you know. Like No Longer You for the longest time was my favorite song, and it was because I could associate it with my D&D game the easiest, because I had an oracle and like the prophet and blah blah blah. And then I really like Dangerous because again I could associate it with my D&D game. But if I'm looking at pure song craft, if I'm looking at pure story craft, Odysseus takes it. Its only competition is Would You Fall in Love with Me Again, which is the first ballad, the first love song that we hear, which is final song of the story, which brings back all of these things. And we hear Penelope's voice for the second time because this entire saga has been leading up to her. Here Odysseus and Penelope finally duet at the last possible moment after 20 years of waiting, and you hear Penelope sing motifs that we've heard before, which was in the underworld, where we hear Odysseus's mom for the first time.
That voice. It can't be. Mom?
Odysseus, when you come home, I'll be waiting. Even if you're the last thing I see, I'll be
I'm right here, Mom. Can't you see? I'm waiting. I took too long.
I'll always love you. I will fall in love with you over and over again. I don't care where or when, no matter how long it's been, you're mine. Don't tell me you're not the same person. You're always my husband, and I've been waiting,
Penelope. Penelope.
And then you hear Penelope repeat that, the only difference being that Penelope's still alive. And does it sound a little bit like Cat's Meow and Would You Love Me from Lee from Barbie Princess and the Pauper? Yes.
Your bow wows, the cat's meow. It's how I know you're you.
Would you fall in love with me again if you knew all I've done? The things I cannot change. Would you love me all the same?
It does sound a little bit like that. I just think music's cool, guys. I just like music a lot until I am able to see this bitch in person, and trust I will. I don't care how much money it takes to get me to wherever they're putting this on. I will get it. I bought the merch. I'm waiting for it to arrive. I'm gonna kidnap my bestie and we're gonna go watch Epic the Musical on Broadway. It's the only outcome. I have to go see it. It's so good and it's so fun to just see this like evolve and change over time, and to see all like the lyrics that were cut but also were referenced back to. I just think music's cool. Here's the thing. People want to be a part of something. It is an inherent human desire for connection, for the ability to be vulnerable, to be able to express yourself, to have community who are also into the same things as you are, to have that baseline understanding with someone. Being able to be a part of community, to watch a community grow and change, and to watch the media that that community surrounds itself with come something much bigger is fascinating. To talk to other people about that media, to hold hold on to something that someone else made, to tear that apart, put it back together, and give it back, being, look what I can do. Look what I made because of you. Look what I made because you inspired me to. It's so cool to be a part of fandom, to be involved in multiple fandoms and see the way that they adapt and change to new things, to the world around them, and the way that each one is uniquely different, but inherently at the very core they are the same. To see how art changes people, how it affects people. I'm so excited about Epic. I don't think I could stop being excited about Epic. I want to see not just what happens with Epic, but what else that Jay makes, what else that the cast makes. That is what's fun about Epic, is not just like Epic the musical, but Epic the subculture that surrounds it. Thank you for watching. I very much appreciate you guys being here. I don't know what I'll post next. We'll find out. Probably gonna be books because I did a whole bookshelf thing. Look at it. It's so pretty. I have the Odyssey right here. I have Frankenstein right here, and that's all you need to know about me, really. Thank you for so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.